Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, and today I would like to discuss my memories with not only the Wii, but also the Wii U. Now it's an interesting combo today, mostly due to the fact that I only owned a Wii U. I never actually owned a Wii. I have memories with it, but I never actually owned one myself. So I was like, you know what? I'll combine them together because there's really not too much, even with the memories I have with the Wii, there's not too much there beyond, I play with some friends. That's kind of a big chunk of those memories. Although I do have a couple of Wii games. So of course, we'll start with the Wii. And what I'm actually gonna do is start with the fact that I was incredibly close to actually winning an original Wii. And this was back when I was in high school. I don't think I told this story at all yet, so I'm pretty sure it's brand new out of the series. But when I was in high school, and this was, I'm sure I did it the year later, but it's the last one I remember. It's the only one that ever had any significance. But it was, of course, selling candy or whatever, selling the stuff. And it's like, hey, you sell this much stuff. The more you sell, number one person that sells gets a Wii. And I was like, oh, a free video game console, the Wii, which of course, this is when the Wii had come out. It was still tough to get. Not that I was overly concerned with it. I just never ended up getting one myself. But it was like, oh, I can get a free console. Yeah, I'm going for it. And of course, I came super effing close. I was selling, and I was selling. I was doing my best, and I came up in second place, and that really effing sucked. I was like, man, I was so effing close. And I got a cool, second place gift, which was this really cool light that was and it was a tall, if you stood it straight up, I think it was 5 or 6 feet tall or something crazy like that. And each section had its own different color light. It was just a giant lamp, and you could bend it and stuff and put in all sorts of weird shapes, and just the lights would just turn. It was just a big lamp, and you could just set it up how you want and just make it look weird, and it had all different colors on it. It was kind of cool. Unfortunately, I don't have that anymore because it broke one day. I'm bending it and it just snapped. Clearly it was hey, I bent it the wrong way or whatever, and it just broke. And it broke at the second level or something. So I had 2 lights at the bottom, and then the top 3 were just gone. And technically, super unsafe, but it did work because I saw the electricity in it, because I was like, the bottom piece turns on, and then you just stick this metal on top of this metal, and then you see lightning shoot between it, and then the colors light up again. And it was like, well, that's cool, but I'm pretty sure it'll get me killed one day. So I had to toss the whole thing. I was like, as nice as it is to just, touch these 2 pieces together and you see lightning kind of arc through and it turns the other 3 pieces on, I'm not gonna put electrical tape on it and just be like, yeah, let's just see how it works. Over time, that's it was just too risky. So I was like, sadly it's gotta go. So it really blows that I ended up getting second place. And I wanted, like I said, I thought the lamp was cool. Obviously it's no effing Wii. It wasn't even, heck, if they were like, hey, we got a Wii for number 1 and a Game Boy, whatever that was, I guess at that time it definitely would have been a DS, it wouldn't have been a Game Boy. But at that time, if it was a DS, that would have been sick, because I never had any of those. I never had much interest, but if I got one for free, I'm telling you, I would have bought some games for it, that's for sure. But sadly, second place, I got a cool lamp that also effing broke. And of course it did. So, that's the memory I have. The closest I came to actually having my own actual Wii was during that time. So that was very unfortunate. I think of that all the time. I never worked harder to sell whatever the F I was trying to sell, cookies, chocolate. It wasn't Little Caesars at that time, but I was trying. I tried, and I got second place in it. I think of that all the time. Man, I was so close, and I would have had a Wii, and I would have had it to this day, most likely. But sadly, that's the closest I ever came to actually owning one myself. But I definitely had, family members that had it, so I have tons of experience with the Wii, especially considering Smash Brothers Brawl. My cousins had it, and these are the cousins, I'm sure I mentioned this in the Dreamcast episode, these are the cousins I played Power Stone with, and it was like, all right, Brawl came out, and we were on Smash Brothers. Heck, Snake was in it, Sonic was in it. It was a time to be alive, honestly. So we played the crap out of Smash Brothers Brawl, and honestly, that's mostly what it was for my... Honest, I gotta be honest, maybe 70% of my entire time with the Wii was probably Smash Brothers, if I'm being totally honest. And I've had other games, I owned 4 or 5 actual games that I played on the Wii, but I still feel 70% still, if we're going time-wise, I think still counts as Smash Brothers Brawl. So that was my introduction to really being on the Wii. And then my cousin also ended up getting oh god, what was it? Resident Evil Umbrella Chronicles. So I got to play through that, which is a recreation or like a co-op retelling of Resident Evil 0, 1, and 3, and then it has its own little mini story in there. And then later on, my sister actually ended up having a Wii, and so I ended up getting to play hers. Like, this is like way down the line. I ended up actually like playing on hers when she ended up getting a Wii. And then I had a couple games of my own, and that's when I ended up getting Darkside Chronicles, which covers 2 Code Veronica, and then it has its own like specialty. Operation Javier is what it's called. Like its own, like each one of those has their own like unique story to the game for Umbrella and Darkside Chronicles. And I still remember to this day getting that game at GameStop the day after Christmas, and they gave me this ultra, and some of you who are Resident Evil fans, you're gonna remember this. Darkside Chronicles had a t-shirt where if you got this shirt and you flipped it inside out, there was a zombie face underneath. So if you know, like how people will put their shirts over their heads, it would be a zombie face where your face would be if you lifted it up. And I loved that shirt, and I don't know what happened to it. It's lost to time, and I don't know what happened. And I think of that shirt every once in a while. I'm just like, man, I miss that Resident Evil shirt so bad. And it really sucks because it's Resident Evil. It's my favorite franchise, and I wasn't expecting it. I didn't think they even had that. I just went, and my aunt took me to GameStop the day after Christmas, and it was just like, I just really want Darkside Chronicles. I love me some Resident Evil. I want to play the new first-person Resident Evil. And they gave me a shirt. I was like, oh, it comes with a shirt too? I was super happy. And I love that game too. I know a lot of people have an issue with like the motion camera. I've never had that issue, thank goodness. When I eventually start actually playing my VR, because I have a PSVR 2, which I've had for months and I've never used. Eventually I'll get to play in that, and I know that I won't suffer from like motion sickness. I don't have that problem, thank goodness. But I love that game. I always thought that one was super fun. I like it a lot more than Umbrella Chronicles, and you can even unlock like alternate costumes and stuff like that. I always thought that one was a really good upgrade to Umbrella Chronicles, and I wish I bought them when they were on the Wii shop when it was closing down. I just did my PS2 episode earlier, if anyone saw that one, and I talked about that, but I wish I got those games. I definitely do. I still have my Darkside Chronicles, but I would have loved to have had at least Umbrella Chronicles and RE4. But that was a good game. I still enjoy that. Like I said, still have it. I can play it on my Wii U. And technically, I have to buy nunchucks. I do not own any nunchucks, so we'll get to that when we get to the Wii U portion. So all of this was only played on the Wii. I think if I play anything on my Wii U, it'll be brand new again. Like all of the save files are like on my sister's Wii, which is broken now, by the way. Like she did something to mess it up, and so like there's no more Wii. Like I never even got to finish one of my games, which was Okami. I never finished Okami. I got it for the Wii. And I was like, it's Okami, it's super popular and super famous, and why the F isn't Okami on the Switch? Has anyone thought of that? Like, I find that to be the weirdest thing in the world, that something weird happened, and they were just like, like they remastered it. But, we have like Okami Den for PSP, if I'm not mistaken, and then they did like an actual like remaster and stuff. And then I'm like, how is there not a Wii or a Switch version of Okami on the Switch? Unless I'm insane and I've been missing this whole time, but I'm pretty sure that's never happened, because I'm like, no one, like, I feel like it would have, especially with Okami 2 coming out, I'm sure I would have, especially with that, once that was announced, I'm like, I almost guarantee I would have heard someone be like, yeah, and make sure you get it on the Switch so you can keep up with, like, they never did that. And I always thought that was the weirdest thing in the world. Like, how in the world did you guys not, even if it wasn't like an HD remaster or anything, like just port it to the Switch and just bring back the motion control version? Because that's why I never bought it for like PlayStation, because I was like, well, I kind of want the motion control version, if I'm being totally honest. And of course I still have it, so like I said, if I buy myself a nunchuck, I can still play it on my Wii U, which I'm sure that'll happen one day. I'll buy a nunchuck. But I always thought that was the most insane thing. Like, how did they not update this and just, I would expect, if it was on the Switch, it would be like, hey, it's a Wii game, put it on the Switch, hopefully 60 frames 1080p. But that always blew my mind. I was like, I don't understand how they never did that, and that seems so crazy. Maybe something insane will happen. They'll be like, surprise, Switch 2 version, we're finally putting it on there, and then leading into Okami 2. But I always thought that was crazy. I played it, and I played it one night. I also do have, and some of you already know this story, but for those of you who don't, Okami on the Switch, or not on the Switch, sorry, Okami on the Wii has the IGN, like, what the watermark? It has the copyright on the effing cover art, because they didn't erase it, because they just like took it I don't understand how this happens when it's like, it's your game. How do you take your cover art from someone else's website? It's your art. But they took the cover art from IGN, and it literally has the IGN watermark on it. If you look in the right spot, you can see it straight up says IGN. And it's a classic watermark. It's like, you can barely see it, but it's on there. So I do have that specific version. And I think that was like all Wii versions. I don't know if they changed that later on, but I'm pretty sure if you bought it on the Wii, you have a little IGN like copyright symbol on there. So I always found that. I remember when I first heard about that, I was like, no way. And I looked online and I was like, it's right there. Like, that's insane. That's insane to me. So if you never knew that story, there you go. But I played Okami one time. Bored the crap out of me. There was so much effing reading in the beginning. I was about to lose my effing mind. Like, I was shocked how much reading there was. And this is literally the beginning of the game. Like, it was so much effing reading. I'm like, why would they start the game like this? Like, and this is any game on earth. It doesn't matter how good the game is. There was so much effing reading right off the top. I was losing my mind. And I got through it, and I was bored out of my effing mind, because I swear it took like over 30 minutes of reading to get through, and it was nuts. And then, you start playing the game. It's like, it is fun game to play, but my God, that was like the worst intro to a game I've ever experienced. It was like, why would you put this much reading in the intro to the game? Like, why wouldn't you pace this junk out throughout the tutorial or something? So I always remember that and being like bored out of my effing mind. But I still want to play the game. And like I said, one day I'm sure it'll happen, and I'll get a nunchuck, and I'll end up going back to playing the original Wii version of Okami. But that's another one of the games I had. Classic, even though sadly the third game really disappointed me. But No More Heroes 1 and 2 are God tier. I don't care what anybody says. I love both those games. They are ridiculous and silly and over the top, and super fun to play, especially with the motion controls. I know that you can do, obviously we got like the PS3 version and stuff like that, and if you did get the PS5 version for No More Heroes 3, obviously, well, I would assume there's no motion controls in that as well. It's just with the thumbsticks, but it was always fun. It was super fun, and it was simple. It was like, it would only do it for, like charging your beam katana, and of course the big joke, which I think the game is so old now, even with the third game, and especially how it didn't really like blow up or anything. A lot of people that weren't into that series probably don't remember that joke of it being like, it looks like you're jacking off every time you charge up the beam katana, and that was always like the funniest, most childish thing in the world. And it was like, it's hilarious, it's perfect, and it's like, you just gotta you shake it to get your beam katana up, and it just persisted. And I love that they kept that throughout the franchise, of course, but it was just silly and over the top and violent, and it was just cool. Like, it's such a cool game, and I always loved the visuals for it. 2, I think, is definitely my favorite out of the franchise, although I did, when 2 actually came out, I did miss the fact that you could drive around the city, and then they brought that back in 3, and they made it absolutely effing horrible, where they had these giant effing areas, and I'm like, why did they build this crap? Like, there's literally one area, like, it's just one actual map where you don't do anything. It's just for bonus missions, and it's literally like one bonus mission, and you have to drive like all the way to the effing end of the map. Or there's 2, I think. One is like a race as soon as you get on the little island, and the other one you literally have to drive to the other end, which is like a straight line. But it's like, they did not need to build it. Like, they literally built a bunch of crap that they did not need in that third game. It's super weird. Like, they built so many giant open areas, and I'm like, oh, maybe they're gonna expand this and like new areas open up, and it's like, no, it's just these. And there's like, it's no point to making these giant open areas. They did a lot of weird stuff that I thought was super dumb in that third game, but that's not what this is about. That'll be its own video, I'm sure, because that's definitely on the list of games that like disappointed me. It's one of the few times I ever actually made a video talking about how a game disappointed me was No More Heroes 3. You guys can check that out, but I'm sure I'll do like another sort of updated version on this. But for No More Heroes 1 and 2, I absolutely love those games. I thought visually they looked really good. They had their own like specific art style. They look great if you do a specific version on a different type of non-Nintendo based console that you may or may not emulate. And you can do it in 4K 60 frames. I haven't done it myself, but I saw it on YouTube one time, and I was like, well, that changes my perspective on things, because that game looked ridiculously amazing in 4K 60 frames. So, I'm not saying I'm gonna do anything like that, but if I did, I already own the game. Twice technically, because I bought the limited run games collector's edition, so I do have that. So I'm a big fan of No More Heroes 1 and 2 at least, and I love those games on the Wii for sure. Like, and I remember, it was so funny No More Heroes, and I still remember this quote, because Suda51 was like, all right, I'm done with No More Heroes right now, because he had 1 and 2, and he was like, when the next Nintendo console comes out, then I'll make No More Heroes 3. When they announced the Wii U, that was literally the first thing I thought of. I was like, No More Heroes 3. As soon as the Wii U was announced, I was like, they're doing No More Heroes 3. Like, he's gonna do it now. We got the next console. It's about to happen. And then I had to wait till the Switch came out, years into the Switch too. And I had to wait, and I was like, finally, No More Heroes 3. And then, you know, we got the No More Zero 3 that we got, sadly. But I always remember that back in the day. I was so hyped for a third No More Heroes game that I held on to that quote like you wouldn't believe. He was like, I'm done with it for now, but when the next Nintendo console comes out, I'm going to make the third game. And I was like, okay, they did it. And then just absolute silence. In that, you know, in between times, we did get Lollipop Chainsaw, which I thought was really good. I always love the fact that they referenced the No More Heroes quote, where he kills the guys in the beginning of the first game, and he says, something, fuckheads. And then in Lollipop Chainsaw, she calls them undead dickheads. And I was like, oh, that's a cool No More Heroes reference. So I always loved that in that game. But No More Heroes 1 and 2, definitely amazing games. I would love to see, I always wish that they did the second game like they did the first one, where they had like that PS3 version. I was always like, man, it would be sick if they remade the first 2 games with those graphics and then, you know, brought it back to motion controls. Like, that'll never happen. Like, at this point, they did the first one and they never even bothered with the second one. But I always thought, I was like, man, I would love it if they remade the games on a Nintendo console and, you know, did motion controls and stuff. And heck, I would accept it. You know, even if I don't like the third game too much, I would love it if they were like, hey, we're straight up remaking 1 and 2. I don't think this will ever happen because Suda's doing other stuff right now. He wasn't even involved in the Lollipop Chainsaw remake, actually, but he was involved in Shadow of the Damned. So that, you know, he's still involved in some of the things he did, but he wasn't involved with, you know, Lollipop Chainsaw. But I would love it if they were like, hey, and, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff going on in different companies and this and that, but I would love it if they were like, hey, we're going to do straight up remakes of No More Heroes 1 and 2. And it could straight up be the same game and just do like a graphical update. Because I don't really know what else you could add, if I'm being completely honest. Like, there's stuff you could add, but I wouldn't even want them to change it. I'd be like, hey, just make the exact same games and just do the graphical updates. You don't have to like change around the open world. You don't have to add an open world to the second game, which will kind of destroy it, because that was the whole point of the mini games, was you just teleport over. But just remaster them and make the graphics. They could even I was gonna say they could even look like the third game, but well, they could. If it was the original 2 games and they redid them to look like the third game, I think that would be fine, because they wouldn't be looking super ugly because of like these ridiculous open worlds that they created. The first game, I think, was succinct enough that it would work. The world is like small enough to still fit onto the cartridge and it would be fine, but they wouldn't really have to. If they could do like, you know, like I said, the 4K 60 that I saw somewhere on the internet, if that could happen for No More Heroes 1 and 2, and then you just throw that at me on like Switch 2, I'm perfectly fine. Just the exact same graphics, and you just boost it up to 4K, give me 60 frames, exact same game, I'd be more than happy with rebuying No More Heroes 1 and 2, because I love those games so much. They're just really good. So I always enjoyed those. Those are definitely some classics, and I don't think it'll ever happen, but I would love to see him come back. I would love to see him come back 100%. But the other game that I had that was an absolute masterpiece from one of my favorite franchises on planet Earth. It's not Resident Evil, because I already talked about it, but it was Dead Space Extraction. I could not believe how good that game was when I finally ended up playing it. Because I'm like, you know, everyone says the same thing, especially when it was like the Wii. The Wii U was a little different. We'd already gotten to the point of having a couple of mature games. So the Wii U was like, okay, it's mature, and it, you know, it happens, and especially, you know, we'll get to, you know, Bayonetta 2, of course. But it was like, okay, they have mature games, Wii U. The Wii itself was like a rare phenomenon for the mature audience, where it was like, you could get a bunch of Call of Duties. They made a couple. They were the grossest things on earth, so I don't know why. Like, I remember my sister had, God, what did we get? World at War? That was one of the wildest experiences I've ever had with a port of a video game, and that even had online. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, this looks ugly, okay? It looks like absolute garbage. But you can play it, and technically you can play 2 players, and the second person is just on rails. Couldn't believe it. Like, it blew my mind. I was like, this is something. This is horrible. But it was what it was, you know? It was what it was. But Dead Space Extraction was absolutely phenomenal. That game also actually looks pretty good. But Dead Space Extraction was super fun. I love that game. Also had a co-op thing where if you were playing 2 players, well, technically the whole thing was on rails. So I guess it wasn't the same. It wasn't nearly the same as like Call of Duty, where you can control one person and then player 2 is just there pointing and stuff. It was on rails in general, so both people were just aiming as the characters automatically moved. But that was a fun game. That I absolutely love that game. I still think, well, I mean, honestly, I still think Dead Space as a whole is underrated, but that's probably due to the fact that EA is garbage and they killed one of my favorite effing franchises twice, which is utterly ridiculous. So maybe that's why I feel like it's underrated, because they killed it so hard 2 separate times, and I'm like, that just feels underrated. Like, how do you do something like that? And the remake was so good. Just to shout out that company, but it's EA. It's just EA. But I love Dead Space Extraction. I remember when it got remade on the PS3. It didn't look too much different. I thought it was going to be like a straight up remake when they announced that, when Dead Space 2 like officially was announced. And they're like, yeah, and if you buy it on like PS3, you can get Dead Space Extraction on it. I was like, whoa. But I was like, it kind of looks the same. And I didn't have like the Move controllers anyway, so I don't think I ever really even touched it outside of like just turning it on to look at it. And I was like, it doesn't look that much different. And then I was like, I'm definitely not using the analog stick to slowly move this cursor across the screen. So I never played it. I never actually like played through the game, but I absolutely love that game. And I would love to have seen, had it not been killed off twice, I would have loved to have seen that game get remade. And it's like, would they remake it in first person again, or would they make it more like a classic Dead Space game and just have a bunch of people in it and keep it third person? So I was curious about all sorts of things when they killed it twice. But once again, neither here nor there. We're talking about the Wii right now and not EA, which excellent assholes. But the final game, unless I have another one that I just can't remember right now, the final game that I owned on the Wii was another mature game, which is another game that I wish was remastered on either the Wii U or on the Switch, and I completely understand why it wasn't, because it did not do gangbusters, and that was Mad World. Excessively underrated, one of the most beautiful looking games I've ever played, because for anyone who does not know what Mad World is, as I pass this 18-wheeler Mack truck, Mad World looks like a manga. It's black and white, and then the only 2 colors that exist outside of that are yellow and red. Obviously red is for blood, and yellow I think is just for like signs and stuff, and onomatopoeia, which is like boom and bam and splat and stuff like that. They have like yellow just kind of strewn throughout a little bit. Absolutely love that game. I love the crap out of that game. It is so much fun, and I always thought, except, you know what? Here's a super fun fact. That is a Platinum Games game, Bayonetta creators and all that. Mad World came out like 2 months before Bayonetta ever came out. Mad World is the first ever Platinum Games game. That was the first one that they actually made under like, the actual moniker of Platinum Games. And then Bayonetta came out like a tiny bit after, like I said, like a month or 2 after that was when Bayonetta released. It's funny to look back on that. It's interesting to see like the timeline for when games came out, and things are like so far apart. And that always makes me think of like, I was playing God of War 2 and the PS3 was out already and stuff like, crazy stuff like that. Like God of War 2 came out when the PS3 was already out. It's funny stuff like that. But Mad World is like the first published, like out into the world Platinum Games game. Steve Bloom, surprise, surprise, plays a grizzled like dude who kills people. Shocker. But the game is absolutely beautiful and hilarious, because they have like one dude where he's basically is sent to this tournament where you just fight up the ranks and kill a bunch of people, and you do it in like over the top ways. He does this in 2 separate games. What the F was that other game? Bulletstorm. It's the exact same premise. It's not the same story wise in no way, shape, or form, but the idea of being like kill people in cool over the top ways and getting bonus points. 2 Steve Bloom games where they're just hardcore criminals. Like Bulletstorm is way more comedic. I'd say it's way more comedic, because even the main character is silly in Bulletstorm. In Mad World, he's a lot more serious, and it's the characters around him that are silly. But I never thought of that before. I was like, Steve Bloom is the main character in 2 games where it's like, hey, kill a bunch of people, but do it in creative ways, and you get bonus points. Never thought of that until literally just now. Both of those games are great, by the way. I love Bulletstorm. I always thought that was a fun game. That was my first ever Steam game, by the way. First game I ever beat all the way through on Steam. First game I ever bought on Steam. Bulletstorm. So there's a random story fun fact for you. I still remember the first game I ever bought on Steam, and it was Bulletstorm. And I to this day, I think that's an amazing game, and I hate the fact that it never got a sequel. I always hated that. I always thought that was a great game. But Mad World, also really great. I didn't think that it would end up getting a sequel, but I always wish. I was like, man, I would love to see, once again, I'm sure there are certain PC-based ways where you can see it, emulate it, 4K 60 frames. I may or may not have seen footage of it. Not personally, of course, that would be illegal. But I've seen footage. Definitely seen footage. And once again, it's one of those things where it's like, I'd prefer it on console because of the motion controls. Like, it would just be different doing it strictly through controller. But such a fun game. Such a fun game, and over the top and bloody, and just the art style of it looking like a manga where it is truly, you know, like I said, black, white, red, and yellow are the colors. And I was like, man, just from an artistic standpoint, that game needs way more recognition. I know it's not like the biggest and baddest thing of all time. It's pretty simple. You go through, kill people in spectacular fashion, get more points, deal with silly characters and cool boss fights and stuff like that. But I still think of that game just from an artistic standpoint, and I'm like, nobody does that. Like, there's so few games where you just, like, artistically, I'm like, man, that's not easy to do. You can't just do a manga color scheme in 3 dimensions. It just does, it's not super easy. Like, you know, obviously now we have CyberConnect. I'm sure they could easily pull it off in full black and white, but that doesn't change the fact that it's not easy to do. And especially because I was like, the first time I'd ever seen that happen. I think it's the only time it's really happened. I'm sure you know, I shouldn't say that. There's like a quadrillion games. Like you know, there's probably been like 15,000 games made as of the day I'm recording this. 15,000 games probably just came out on Steam. I'm sure there are others that have done it, but that game looks so cool, and it's still fun to play. Like I said, it's just outside of the art. I always thought it was just like a fun, you know, silly. I guess you could kind of say hack and slash. It's hard to really describe it. It's not in the same character action genre as a lot of, you know, Platinum games, but man, I miss that game so much. And I think of it all the time. I'm like, that game is so underrated. It straight up needs a remaster, but I don't think it's gonna happen. I think if you want it in 4K 60, you're probably gonna have to go with full emulation. But that's a really great game. I think it's super underrated. I mean, honestly, like, no one effing talks about that game, but I love Mad World. I remember getting that and be like, this looks super cool. The cover is literally just black and white. I think some of the text is in red, and it's just fun. And also, he has a chainsaw on his arm that's like one of those impossible chainsaws that, like, it's like a gauntlet chainsaw, but the chainsaw like pops out and then it goes back in, and it's like, well, if it goes back in, how is it going back into that small space? It's like Wolverine's claws. When you make them too long, it's like, well, how are those inside of his entire forearm? That would like go up to his effing elbow if his claws looked that long. It was like that. It was like, where's this chainsaw going? It just pops out and then you chop people up. It's like, whatever. It's sick, and I effing love it. So, yo, I missed that game. Also, like I said, I feel quite underrated. But those are, you know, the big memories when it comes to the Wii itself. And honestly, I think I can actually end this with just the Wii itself, because there's actually quite a bit to say when it comes to the Wii U, because there's Zombie U and Bayonetta and all the stuff I want to talk about with that. I honestly didn't expect to have enough to, you know, really go through. I thought I was gonna like shoot through it, like, I played Smash Brothers and then kind of jump through, but it's like, no, I actually do have a lot to say when it comes to, you know, kind of those old Wii memories. I wasn't expecting to have as much to say because I never effing owned the thing. Of course, I skipped over all of Wii Sports. Yes, I played the crap out of that. I did throw the Wiimote one time, and then I was in the room by myself, and this was my cousins who had it, where I played Smash Brothers with them all the time. They weren't there or whatever. I was at my aunt's house. They were gone, but their older brother was in the basement. So I'm playing and I'm doing something, and that junk was like, shoo, and it hit the corner of the wall, and clearly it was loud because my cousin came upstairs. I was like, what was that noise? And I was like, I fell. I just told him I fell. I was like, yeah, I fell. Like that. I threw the Wiimote. It hit the corner of the wall super effing hard. Nothing broke, thank goodness, but that junk slipped right out of my hand, and it made some noise. He was like, what the hell was that? And I was like, I fell. I was like, yep, I fell. I was like, I didn't say anything about that Wiimote. I was like, yep, I fell. I made a bunch of noise falling. So, William, I doubt you overhear this, but that's what happened. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah, I threw the Wiimote. It hit the corner of the wall. It was super loud, but I was like, yeah, I fell over. So that's a funny memory. I definitely had that mishap, but never on the TV, never broke any TV, you know, playing with family and stuff. We do the, you know, Wii bowling, of course, was, you know, I'm from Michigan, which is specifically Detroit. It's the bowling capital of the world. If you didn't know that, my family bowls. Like, we bowl like crazy. So when Wii Sports came out and it was Wii bowling, that was the one. I know everybody did it, but we like that was it. That was life. Like, Wii bowling was the thing. We did that, and I love Wii boxing. I played that up to the point of getting like the silver gloves too. So I did enjoy that. Those were fun, and of course, it was free, so definitely played it. Shout out to Reggie Fils-Aimé, current events and whatnot. But I think I'll end it there as far as my thoughts on the classic Wii. And I guess next episode, well, who knows if I put these out in order, but the next one I'm recording for sure is going to be the Wii U episode, and talking about my time with that. I know how it went, but much like Mad World, I actually think the Wii U's slightly underrated. I kind of love the Wii U. Maybe that's biased because Bayonetta 2 came out on the Wii U and Nintendo saved it, and hey, it's Bayonetta. But we'll talk about that in another episode. But like I said, I would love to know your thoughts on the Wii. We are, of course, in the Switch 2 era now, so I'm sure everyone's thinking about the past and, all the old Nintendo consoles and everything like that. So I definitely want to know your thoughts on the Wii, how it changed the world in gaming, looked ugly as hell for most games, unless it was specifically from Nintendo or, the very rare Platinum Games game of Mad World. But we'll love to know your thoughts on all things Wii related. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.